My name is Jack Ashford, and I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And when I first had my encounter with Motown, it started basically in Boston, Massachusetts. I was playing vibes with a jazz group, and the leader of the group wanted to augment the sound so that we could be important enough to be kept over, because we were really bombing in this place. And so one day he came to work and he told me, he says, I have a tambourine that I need you to play when you're not soloing. I was playing vibes at that time. And the irony of it was the fact that the tambourine, he said he saw it in a pawn shop. I have never in my life seen a tambourine in a pawn shop. They usually have horns and drums, but a tambourine? So I thought about that, but I'll get into that later, what I really felt that meant. So this particular night when we were playing a song called Take Five, Dave Brubeck. And I finished soloing, and I'm hoping he forgets this tambourine. He said, pick the tambourine up. And I picked the tambourine up, and I put it in my hands, and it was like I was looking at someone else play it, because it was doing all the right stuff. And I said, well, this is different. So people started listening to this, and they were talking about it was a jazz tambourine player at the Circle Club. I think it was called the Circle Club. So they were going out down the street to the other clubs talking about, go down and see this guy playing jazz tambourine. So they start packing the joint. So that first night, the owner said he's going to hold us over a couple of weeks. So that was great. So I knew I was destined to play this tambourine again, and I didn't like it, because I always associated tambourines with church. So one night, a gentleman by the name of Harvey Fuqua came into the club, and he says he wanted to meet me. And when I got off the stand, I met him. He says, my brother-in-law is named Marvin Gaye. I said, really? So he said, yeah. And so he says, I'd like to bring him over to see you, because he's forming a band to go on the road. He has a hit record. He didn't get into the part about did I know him or anything at that first meeting. And so I said, okay. You know, I was trying to be polite, but, you know, I was a jazz musician, and at that time, everybody wanted to be like Miles Davis. So I had a little arrogance in me, too. So I don't know, a couple of nights later, he came into the club with this young-looking guy, and I came off the stand. They introduced me. He says, this is Marvin Gaye. I said, okay. He said, you ever heard of Marvin Gaye? I said, nah, I never heard of him. He says, you ever heard of Stevie Wonder? I said, never heard of him either. So he said, have you ever heard of Motown Records? I said, I don't know him either. He said, it's not a him, it's a company. I said, I never heard of any of them. What instruments do they play? He said, this is Marvin Gaye. So I looked at Marvin. Marvin's sitting there looking kind of shocked at my answers. I said, no, I don't know him. I said, I've never seen a guy in a green suit before either. So he had on a lime green suit. And see, in jazz, everybody wore black. You know, so I'm looking at this guy in this lime green suit. I can't figure him out. And, you know, if you knew Marvin was kind of pensive, he was, you know, a really laid back guy, really laid back. So what happened was I was introduced to him, and we exchanged pleasantries and addresses. Marvin said, well, I'm taking a group on the road. I got a hit record out. I think his record was either Pride and Joy or Hitchhike. I'd never heard it. You know, they didn't play it on the jazz stations, so I didn't know anything about it. And I didn't turn it down because it was a possible gig. So I'm working with this guy, and we were off for a couple of weeks, and I went back to Philadelphia. And I got a telegram from Harvey. And I was surprised. I said, this guy was really serious, you know. And he gave me all the directions, come up to Detroit, and we reimburse you and all that stuff. And so I said I didn't have anything else to do, so I just brought my mother home. In fact, I was painting the picket fence. And I had only closed on the place maybe 2 weeks before that telegram came. So I never slept in it. So I told Mom, I said, Mom, I'm going to Detroit. I said, I don't know these people. I said, but I'm looking at it as another gig. So I'm not going to get excited. So I said, if it's not going to work, I'll come home. She said, okay. She says, ordinarily I would tell you to do a little more exploration. She says, but I don't want to do anything that you follow the wrong direction and find out that you missed out on something. Because she was quite confident I knew how to handle myself. I was about 27, 28. And so I drove all the way to Detroit. I had been to Detroit before going through to Lansing, Michigan, gigging. I always liked Detroit. I said, this is a hip place. I always did say that. So I got there, it was on a weekend, and I saw this house, 2648 West Grand Boulevard. It was like a storefront in a residential area. It looked kind of funny sitting there with that big window. So I got out, and I got up on the steps, and I heard this music coming from somewhere in the interior. And I'm knocking on the door, nobody's answering. I'm getting disgusted. If it had been closer to Philadelphia, I would have turned around and gone back home. So I'm knocking, kicking on the door, and this little short guy comes to the door and says, what can I help you? Can I help you? I said, man, I've been knocking on this door a long time, man. And I know somebody's out here, the music, ain't nobody answering the door. I said, I'm looking for a guy named Marvin Gaye. He thought that was funny. I'm looking for a guy named Marvin Gaye. So he says, I said, my name is Jack Ashford. He said, oh, he's looking for you. I said, okay. And so I'm still raising hell with this guy because of the fact I'm knocking on the door. That was Berry Gordy. I didn't even know it. And he was kind about it, I'm burning him up, I'm breaking his rocks. And he says, all right, come on in the back. And he opened the studio door. I never saw so many people in a small place. Stevie was in there, Clarence Paul, Marvin and the rest of his band, the Funk Brothers. I didn't know any of them people. So I turned to the little short guy and said, why don't they stop that little boy from bumping into everything? I didn't know it was Stevie. He said, he only gonna bump into it once, then he'll know where it is. He won't hit it anymore. I said, that's a strange place here. Got a blind guy around there bumping into everything. So the session was over. He said we had one more tune. They did one song. Then I was introduced to the Funk Brothers. I recognized Earl Van Dyke from Atlantic City because I used to go and play in Atlantic City, and I saw Earl there playing organ one time with a guy named, I forgot his name, but he used to play with a motorcycle seat. His name was Chris Colombo. And Chris Colombo would play when the song started rocking, the seat would start going up and down, hydraulics. And I thought that was cool. Earl was an organ player, so Earl recognized me. So we kind of hit it off. I felt a little better now because somebody that I know. So we had the rehearsal. And everything went okay. We talked to business, and they set up a place for me to stay. And one thing that I noticed, I saw like Brian Holland and them, everybody was wearing mohair suits and had diamonds on their hands. So by me coming from a jazz idiom, you don't see that luxury. All jazz musicians are broke. We true to the cause. Play good music and don't get much money. So I noticed these guys walking around, they all look successful. So one day I went up to the studio, getting ready for rehearsal, and I was sitting they had a big orange couch sitting in the lobby of Motown. They kept it a long time, big long couch. And I was sitting there, and I saw a group of guys, 4 guys standing there talking to the receptionist. And then this thin guy come down. I didn't know who he was, but he was sharp, like all the rest of them guys. He looked successful. And they were talking to him. They said, hey man, please Mickey, please put this record out. They were calling him Mickey. He didn't mean nothing to me, I didn't know him. And he was so cool, he says, he had a thing doing those days. Only he could do it. He had a thing when he talked to you like he's mesmerizing you. He says, just relax, relax, relax. He says, it's coming out, I promise, it's coming out. And that was the Four Tops he was talking to. I didn't know them. They didn't have a hit record. You know, the record that they were talking about was Baby, I Need Your Lovin'. One of the biggest records of the time. And Mickey said, it's coming out. He had that kind of power. And then when I saw him talking to them, Earl and them came in, and I was asking Earl, I said, who was that short guy over there, dressed sharp? Who was that? He said, that's the A&R director, that's Mickey Stevenson. I said, oh, really? I said, he can get stuff done, huh?
Hold on a second. Did you? Yeah. The car horn was interrupting you. So start again from, you asked Brian, who was that little guy?
I asked Earl.
Earl, I'm sorry.
I asked Earl who this guy was. He said, Mickey Stevenson, A&R director. So I knew what the A&R director did. So I said to myself, I said, I got to tighten up with this guy because that will determine how long I stay here. Because I'd already figured out that Marvin Gaye did not like to work. He was a laid-back guy. He was laid way back. But we got along great, but he was laid back. If I didn't know what he sang, I think he was a jazz musician if he didn't wear them green suits. I would have said, this guy, he's cool. He must blow a trumpet or something, you know. But he did like jazz music. But anyhow, I'm getting ahead of my story. So I'm looking at Mickey, and I notice that all the people that come in, they're paying homage to him. With great respect. Forget the homage, just great respect. And he moved very smoothly, and, you know, I knew he was clever. But then after me being there for a while, I knew you had to be clever dealing with people as super talented as they were. You had to know how to get what you want out of them and not make yourself vulnerable and still run the boat. Now, I already met Barry. They already told me I made a mistake with Barry, cussing him out. So I asked Earl how much clout did Mickey Stevenson have? He said, under Barry, you got Mickey. You don't get anything done here without him. I said, oh. So I felt as though the way he acted, I could communicate with him by being on another level. And I didn't want to get in his way. But I heard songwriters talking about hollering and dozing and hollering. It was Mickey, 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 Mickey. And some of the girls used to call him, they had a name called William R. They used to say, William R. I said, oh, okay. So everybody really admired this guy, but he was a likable guy. But he had a lot of clout. And I got the impression that he was a no-nonsense guy. So, you know, in the entertainment business, it takes all kinds. But to run a place like that, because it was like a factory. I mean, they did things like a factory. I detected I had never recorded before. So now I'm in the studio, and I'm getting my feet wet a little bit because they're taking some of the rehearsals and recording them and listening to the playbacks, you know, Marvin. And I noticed sometimes Mickey would come up and he would stand up in the control booth. I very seldom saw Barry, but I saw Mickey all the time because he was a writer. I didn't know he was a writer. So I guess he had to be around where all that was going on, who's writing and all of that. And I found out that if you're going to get a song out, you had to deal with him. If you're going to get a song recorded, you had to deal with him. But he didn't come on like a heavy. He had an assistant. His assistant was named Hank Cosby. And I determined very early that Mickey did a lot of talking through Hank, his assistant. So I said, if this guy does this guy, he makes some decisions that sometimes are not really making people happy. And so Hank is going to be the one that gets shot down. So I said, okay. So Hank's not the one I want to deal with. I want to deal with Mickey. Then I come to find out that there was a lady, a singer that worked there. Her name was Kim Weston. And I'm going to tell you something.
Can you say that again? It was a car horn?
Oh, yeah.
No woman, even today, walked like Kim Weston. No woman. I've seen women on the runway, models. Kim could teach them how to walk. And she seemed to do it so effortlessly.
You're the backup.
Talk fast.
When you start off with, when you mentioned Kim Weston.
To who?
Kim Weston.
Oh, Kim Weston. I started meeting all of the singers. But one thing I noticed that they were instructed not to associate with the Funk Brothers. That I never understood. I don't understand that today. And that's 40-something years ago. But of course, the Funk Brothers were exciting, and they were already having hit records when I got there. So they were held with great admiration and great respect by everybody. I started noticing that. So what happened was Earl Van Dyke invited me over to a club one night called the Chit Chat. And he told me, he says, you know, he said, I know working with Marvin, you're not going to be working a lot. He says, so come on over to the Chit Chat, man. He said, you play some good vibes, he says, and sit in with us, and maybe we can start getting you some work with the Funk Brothers outside of Motown. I said, okay. Well, a woman by the name of Martha Jean, the Queen, was the hostess over there, and she's from Memphis, Tennessee also, I was later to find out. And this particular night, they had a live broadcast, and the disc jockey was named Jack Sorrell from Philadelphia. I didn't know him, but when he found out who I was and I was from Philly, there's some little camaraderie there, and he was hoping I'd do good and everything. And so it was Earl Van Dyke on keyboard, James Jamerson on bass, Robert White on guitar, and a drummer by the name of, I forgot his name. I will before I get finished talking. He was a drummer. Clifford Mack. He was a drummer. Very good drummer. I'll never know why he never got a chance to work at Motown. He was good enough to be there. But Motown was kind of cliquish. No, it was greatly cliquish. And yes, it kind of formulated my technique and how I survived there. Because I'm from Philly. We know how to survive. I went in and got on the vibes, and we played that night, and boy, the people really loved it, okay? And so what happened was Jack Sorrell made an announcement halfway through the show and says, I just got an announcement. He says, Jack Ashford from Philadelphia, just in town, everything, with Marvin Gaye. He was just inducted into this band. They hired him. And he don't even know it. I didn't know it. I said, man, I look Earl over there laughing and everything. They made me a Funk Brother that night. And we finished the gig, and they recorded it. And I still have that live recording of all of that, how that came about. And I had a song that I wrote called It's for Love the Petals Fall. Pretty ballad. Marvin Gaye loved it. Can I digress just a second?
Sure.
After I got over there for a while, Marvin was asking, did I have any songs? I said, yes. I told him about It's for Love the Petals Fall, so I sang it for him. He said, oh, he loved the song. So we recorded it. Everything's going great. And somebody came to me one day and says, Marvin's going to do your song, but we signed these papers for you to assign the publishing and the copyright to us. I said, who's us? They said, to Motown Corporation. I said, oh, we ain't going to do that. I didn't know that much about it, but I know assigning and giving all my rights up, that didn't even sound right to me. So I think at that was a defining moment with Mickey, Hank, and everybody else over there that I wasn't that kind of guy. And so they didn't do the song. They didn't let it come out on Marvin. It's still in their catalog. But I learned a lesson. I said, I have to learn my way around this company, because you could very easily slide in the front door and slide out the back door quick if you didn't have something to go for you. So I used to go back to the studio after the session. Well, by this way, Earl and them started getting me on sessions. Smokey Robinson was very, very instrumental in me getting into the Motown mechanism, because he liked me. And he says, man, he says, listen, he said, every day that you're not called for a session, you call me and I'll try to get you on a date. So he put me on a song for him. It was the first song, no, second song I played vibes on. It was called Ooh Baby Baby. I played vibes on it. He liked it, he thought that was great. And so Holland, Dozier and Holland heard it, and so they put me on a Supreme song. The Supremes hated the song, I think. It was called Where Did Our Love Go? Their first big record. They didn't know it was a hit till they were on the road. But I played vibes on that, so my rep was getting around. So I used to go back to the studio to find out what did they do with the music after I played on it. And I saw how they would overdub, how they would mix, and do all of these processes. And that was exciting to me. So I would go home, have dinner, go back up there. And then I went to Lucy Wakefield, Barry's sister. She ran the publishing. And I told her I was interested in learning publishing. And so she was impressed with that. She says, you did sessions over here and you want to learn? I said, I want to learn it all. So she taught me publishing. So by now, my name is getting through the company. But they really never heard me play tambourine. And I said, there's 3 or 4 vibe players up in here. It's not a safe spot for me to be, because I don't have an exclusive on this. So I could be in and out easy, because they pull somebody else in. But they'd never heard me play this tambourine. And by that time, I was quite proficient at it. So the first song that I played tambourine on, I guess the one that made me a legend in the company, was Dancing in the Street. That record took off and the tambourine was so high. The reason the tambourine was high, they didn't have a microphone and a track for me. So in order to record me, and they said they had to have it, they put me in a booth with the drummer. And the drummer had a mic for the sock cymbal. They said, that's your mic too. So I'm playing tambourine, I'm on the mic for the sock cymbal. So there are times when I lean into it and it gets louder, they can't control that. So what happened, when they got rid of the mix, they can't pull the tambourine down because they pull the sock cymbal down. So they got to leave it all up there. And so now the tambourine is way up there. And if you remember anything about Motown, everyone said the tambourine was too loud at that time. Thank God it was too loud for me. So I'm getting a little rep around there. And so Earl said, Jack, Mickey called me, and he wants us to go to Europe with his wife, Kim Weston. I said, really? He said, so we're taking you too. I said, okay. That lady that walks like that, huh? I said, this is great. He says, Jack, that's Mickey's wife. She walked beautiful. You can hear music. And so we went to Europe with Kim Weston, and the lady that ended up teaching the girls how to walk and how to sit, she was a chaperone. I guess maybe my expression showed that she needed a chaperone over in Europe. So we went to Europe, and Kim treated me very nice.
Maxine Powell. Say your name.
Maxine Powell, that was her name. And we stayed at a place in Europe. Let me tell you something. When we were flying over, we were over the North Atlantic, and the tour got canceled. Before we could get to Europe, the tour was dead. So Brian Epstein, who had the Beatles, he was tight with Barry. He says, I got to hook something up here. They're over here now, we got to do some work. This is what he put together, which became a legendary tour. The Kinks, Bobby Shafto, Gene Pitney, Marianne Faithfull, and Georgie Fame. That went down in history. I didn't know it. Because it was just, the Kinks were just coming out, but they were hot. And Gene Pitney, he was hot over here. I really wasn't down with him, but the tour was great. And then they had Georgie Fame, who was an organ player, had hit records out over here. He eventually married into the royal family over there. He had a African kid playing congas with him. His name was Speedy. Speedy had a conga drum, and the head of it was the skin of his dog. His dog had died. He had the dog's skin put on the drum. He said, I love my dog, this way I can keep him with me all the time. Crazy. I said, this guy's crazy. But it was a great tour, and we were with the Kinks and Kim Weston, and it was great. So when we come back, now I'm having a little more dialogue with Mickey because I was over there with his wife, and it was a success. And by that time, I was starting to explore entrepreneurship. I started putting records out using the Funk Brothers.
Yeah.
And I had a record, the first record was called What Can I Do? You can look it up on Google, by Lorraine Chandler. They thought it was a Motown record. Sounds just like Motown. Had to. Had the same guys. I caught a lot of flack for that. Hank came to me and says, you can't stay here if you continue to do that, you know. So I started changing labels. I was cutting records and I had so many labels, looked like the Yellow Pages, trying to duck them knowing what I was doing. But it didn't do any good. And at that time, Mickey and I kind of fell out because I knew he was behind that movement to stop me from being an entrepreneur. But Barry didn't care. Well, he didn't say he cared because he could have done the same thing, got to Mickey and say, find out what this guy's doing. I would never know. But, and so Mickey go to Hank and say, find out what this guy's doing. And everybody looking like a hero, but somebody got a knife on my back. And so I was putting out hit records, and I want to digress again for a second. This was over 40 some years ago. One of the records that I cut was called, it was by a guy named Eddie Parker. You can pull it up on YouTube, and was called I'm Gone. That record, 2 months ago, sold in London for $16,000 a copy. 2 years ago was for $27,000 a copy. I didn't have a copy. And so my wife said, that's ridiculous. She says, let's go through your files and see what's happening. Well, see, when I did that record, I wasn't married. So my wife went through my publishing files. And fortunately, in the folder of I'm Gone, when the record was released, we dropped 2 copies of it in there, to show that it was released and as reference. I had forgotten about it. So my wife came to me about 3 months ago and says, look at this, a pristine copy of I'm Gone. I called my agent in London. He got in touch with the John Manship Company in London who handles collectibles. He put it out there and sold it for $16,000 for 145 record. Can you believe that? And that was back then when they were trying to stop me. They should have hired me to be a writer and producer if I can get one record. Barry never had a record that sold for 16 grand, you know. And so anyhow, I knew, I was a little leery of Mickey. I don't think I liked him, because I thought he was standing in my way, and I knew God put me there. I felt as though God put me there because there's a lot of things that led up to that was very spiritual. And I thought Mickey was standing in my way, but he was cool about it, and I didn't like that. I don't like, if a guy's down on me and kneeling me, don't smile in my face. So we didn't really get close. And as it became apparent that I was going to do other things, they kind of left me alone. And I prayed on it. And Norman Whitfield brought me a full circle and made it possible for me to stay there because Norman was big then. And he said, I don't care what y'all think. He's the best tambourine player in the world. I'm using him. So he bucked the tide, and I was in the studio. I guess Mickey says, well, let the guy go. And then I started knocking home runs out of there. Signed, sealed, and delivered, and reach out. my stuff was hot. I was becoming a legend. And it was just so fine. So a lot of time went by. And when Standing in the Shadows of Motown came out, the story of the Funk Brothers, Mickey came, we did a gig here, premiere, And Mickey showed up. And I was on the bandstand. I looked down, he was there. And he says, I discovered these guys. I heard him say that. And he was looking at me. I didn't know how to respond to it. I didn't know how to respond to it because in my world, he didn't discover me. I fought for everything I had. I fought. Out of sheer tenacity, I came out on top. But then I tried to be a good Christian. When I came off the stand, we hugged and embraced, and I realized that he was on a job too. Because I never said he was a bad guy. It's just that we were clashing. And you know, I guess he had to tell Barry, well, what's Jackson? Jackson out there killing him. You know, I was recording on everybody's record, Johnny Taylor's, Who's Making Love. I was on so many record labels all over the planet, outside of Motown. I was recording for everybody. Everybody just coming after me because no one played tambourine like me. And there's a story behind that. I did research. I wanted to know who was the first tambourine player. Her name was Miriam back in the day. You know who her brother was? Moses. She was playing tambourine when they were down there celebrating. Moses was talking to God on a mountain. And that changed my whole outlook on everything. When I discovered that, my world changed. I made God number one in my life. I'd always respected him, but he was not number one. I put everything aside and made him number one in my life. And he knew it because I said, he gave me that tambourine because he knew. You see, God put me in music. I was doing something else. And one night I asked him, a long time ago, maybe 5 years before I went to Motown, I asked him to help me because I didn't want to be like the guys I was raised with. In Philadelphia, you know, is inner city everything. And I asked God to help me. I got on my knees and asked him to help me. I said, because I don't want to be like that. And then I forgot about it. He didn't forget about it. He eased me into this music business in such a way you would never believe. I wasn't interested in music. He started me out writing music. The first song was Everlasting, and I never recorded it. But that was a song that I don't ever want to record it because it's symbolic of my relationship with God, and it led me to where I am. I'm the last funk brother standing. And he has blessed me immensely over and over and over. And so when I saw Mickey that night, I had to forgive him because God forgave me. And then Mickey and I just came together. He called me and said he had some work for me, and that went great. And I saw another side of him that I'd never seen before, outside of Motown, you know, and he's a very important part of my life because we share some things that was going on back then. Like, for instance, the drummer, Benny Benjamin. I'm going to show you how much power Mickey had. He named Mickey LaDouche, and that's a pseudonym for Mussolini, who was a friend of Hitler's. And he named Barry the Fuhrer. That's the way Benny named the Funk Brothers. He was good at naming people. And so he used to say, hey, LaDouche. And I noticed Mickey never got offended with that. And so when I just got a star in Hollywood. Mickey was there. I thought he was going to cry because I leaned over to him. I said, LaDouche, did you ever think this would happen? And he looked at me like I stuck a needle in him. He said, I haven't heard that since the 60s. And, you know, we shared that moment together. And he's very important in my life because he's a human being. He really is a human being. And I couldn't detect that then because, you know, we were trying to get somewhere, I guess, you know. And when I said what I had to say about God at that ceremony, he felt that. He knew what I meant because, see, he knows where I came from. He saw me grow in this business, and for me to say that and give praise to where it belonged, he could appreciate that. And so I'm probably tighter with him now than I could have ever been had we been tight back then. Because we both saw Mickey there. He, you know, we talked for a minute, and he remembers, you know, I introduced him to my family. He never saw this family. He saw me before, and he saw me before when I was single. So I was popular. And so what happened was, to run a company with so many stars in it at one time, you had to be able to run it effectively, but not with an iron fist. And I never heard him say a swear word to anyone back in the day. I never heard him say that. He handled, remember now, the Supremes. They're hot. Barry's hot, Diana's hot. So therefore, whatever he does with them, he's got to do it diplomatically. The Four Tops, the Temptations, Marvin Gaye, Junior Walker, Martha, to handle these people and all of them respect you, that's a talent. That is a talent, and he hasn't lost that. He hasn't, you know, when I see him now and I talk to him, he's a very charismatic person. And I think that's what it was. He didn't, even though he used to sing, he didn't sing there, but they respected him for his talent as a writer, I guess as a vocalist. And so you had to get the respect of these people because the Temptations, they were like rogue elephants. You know, I mean, these guys could run into a place and you think there was a bull in a china shop, the building's gone. Not just the china, everything is gone. And so he ran that way, had the respect of the writers, and we had a whole litany of writers that came through there that were very talented, and no matter who it was, they come in naturally when a new musician comes in, he wants to know who's the power. It was Mickey. And you know, you don't usually find an executive with that kind of clout where you call him Mickey. It's Mr. Stevenson or something. Now that would be fitting, but he didn't come off like that where he would demand that kind of approach to it, and it worked very well for him, you know. And so I just hope that what I had to say about him is acceptable by the people that's going to view this, because it's the truth about him. He didn't pick up people. He didn't pick up people. You know, you had to go to him and you had to be straight, and then you could do business with him. It's just the way it was.
Yeah, I think that the viewers will like this because you did tell the truth. And like I said, you know, television watchers aren't stupid.
Right.
They know the truth when they hear it. That's why some shows don't make it. Some shows do make it.
Yeah, yeah.
You done?
If you could describe Mickey in a couple words or in a sentence, what would it be?
A summation?
If you can describe Mickey in a couple words or a sentence, what would it be?
You can't describe Mickey in a sentence because he's too diverse. And when I say too diverse, I'm calling him that from when I was around him on a more regular basis. But I don't think he changed that much. So I would say that
Hold on one second.
you just have to let him do his thing because he already knows what he wants to do. So like I said, I can't picture a person coming up seeking Mickey Stevenson and then land some situation that to see if he's interested. I think if you got anything going, he has to discover you. You know, that's just the way he is. You know, as I knew him. Now, unless he's changed a lot in these years, you know, we all get mellow, and unless he's changed a lot, I don't think he has. And I remember I've seen him now at a different thing. I've seen him in a different light as he's had groups. We did concerts together and things like that. And he's very even-handed. You know, everything went off the way it was supposed to go off. And we have an extremely good working relationship today. You know, even back in the day it was maybe contentious because of what I did and what he did. But, you know, as we come out of that, we're no worse for wear, and he and I share this history of Motown, and we really share something here, because what we know, what we can speak about at Motown is real. It's not something we would want to be. If he speaks about Motown, I'd want to listen, because I know he knows. As they used to say, he knows where the bodies are buried. He knows what's going on, from the engineers to the writers to the receptionists to the mailman. He controlled all of that. And you never saw him get flustered. Always had on them mohair suits, man. Some sharp suits. He was talking to you, just relax, it'll be all right, be all right. This guy could charm the scales off his